Home Manager is a Nix power tool to manage your home configuration. The configuration includes packages, .files, environment variables, services, and more. Nix powered means Home Manager uses Nix language and Nix package manager to manage your configuration. And since Home Manager uses Nix, it would work on macOS and almost any Linux distros. In this tutorial, I will show you how to get started with Home Manager, how to solve common issues, and I will also show you the downsides of using Home Manager. The tutorial will be done on Ubuntu, but it should be applicable to other Linux distros. If you are on macOS, what you see on this tutorial might not be exactly the same, but the differences should be minimal. By the way, no Nix experience is required for this tutorial. Also, if you already use .file or package manager, you can gradually migrate to Home Manager as long as you don't have conflicting configurations. So let's start with installation. There are two ways to install Home Manager: standalone installation and non-standalone installation. Non-standalone installation will not only install but also integrate on top of either NixOS or NixDarwin. Standalone installation, on the other hand, it will install Home Manager just like another programs on your system. In this tutorial, we will do a standalone installation. Before installing Home Manager, you need to install Nix CLI first if you don't have it already. The easiest way to install Nix is by using the determinate Nix installer. All you need to do is to run this command, which is available on top of the installer's readme. And after the installation finishes, if you can run nix flake-help, you're good to go. Next, we will install Home Manager and initialize our configuration. So let's create a directory for our configuration and cd into it. Inside the directory, we will run nix run home manager -init -switch dot. Note the space between -- and init. This command will create initial configuration files in current directory, then it will activate the configuration. If the command finishes without any error, you have successfully installed Home Manager and activated your configuration, and you should be able to run home manager -- version. So let's take a look at the configuration files that were created by the init command, which are home.nix and flake.nix. Home.nix file is where you will put your Home Manager configurations, and flake.nix file is a project file for Nix. You can think of it like package.json file in a JavaScript project. So let's take a look at the flake.nix file. There are a lot of things going on in this file, but the important part here is the option named homeconfigurations.yourusername. In my case, it's homeconfigurations.nixhero. The name nixhero here was generated automatically by the init command, but the text inside these double quotes is actually the name of your Home Manager configuration. So you can assign any name you want and it doesn't have to be your username. So let's change this name to nixhero home, for example. Now that you have a name for your configuration, let's activate it with Home Manager switch command. The command will read your configuration files and apply the configuration to your system. --flake option specifies which configuration from which flake.nix file we want to activate. The string before hash symbol refers to a path where flake.nix file is located, and it's relative to your current directory. In our case, we have flake.nix file on the current directory, so we use dot. And the string after hash symbol refers to the name of the configuration we want to activate. In our case, it's nixhero home, as we saw before on the flake.nix file. After we run this command, we still don't see any changes on our system because the home.nix file is still the same as the initial configuration. So let's actually start making some changes by installing a package. You can use nix search command to find the name of the package you want to install, or you can go to search.nixox.org website. Let's install Causey package as an example. Go to your home.nix file and go to home.packages option. On the list, you can add any packages you want to install. You can safely ignore any lines that start with hash symbol, which is a command in Nix language. All you need to do is to add packages.causey to the list. Now you can run the switch command just like we did before. After the command finishes, you should be able to run Causey on your terminal. The home.packages we just used is one of the Home Manager options. The basic usage of Home Manager is by assigning a value to these options. You can search all available Home Manager options on Home Manager main page or on the search website. As an example, let's search for home.packages option and take a look at the details. The description says home.packages is the set of packages to appear in the user environment. The data type is list of package and the default value is empty list. Sometimes it also comes with examples, which is very useful for beginners. Other than installing a package, Home Manager can also create a file on your home directory. Actually, it will create the file somewhere and create a symlink on your home directory that targets that file. We can do this by setting home.file.path.text option. The path wildcard here is a path to the file you want to create relative to your home directory. So if you want to create a file named myconfig on your home directory, it will look like this. And if you want to put it inside .config directory, it will look like this. You can set it for multiple files in one line style like this or in a key value style like this, but doing both would cause syntax error. So let's create a file named foo.txt with content bar. After you run Home Manager switch command, you should see a symlink named foo.txt on your home directory with content bar. So you just define the file content using Nix string with double quotes. That was one way to write a string in Nix language, but you can also write it in a multiline style like this. When you write it this way, common indentations I highlight here will not be considered as a part of string by Nix language. And of course, you won't see the indentations on the generated file. The indentations are removed at language level. But instead of writing a Nix string, you might want to write your configuration on its own file. You can do that by assigning the path of the file to the source option instead of text option. As an example, let's create a file named mylorem.json. And let's assign path of this file to the source option of home.file.lorem.json. When writing the file path, you shouldn't use double quotes because file path is its own data type in Nix language. And for a variable to be recognized as a path data type, it needs to have at least one slash character. So in our case, we need to add // before the file name. Now after you run the switch command, you should see the file lorem.json in your home directory with content you specified on the file. Now you know how to install a package and create a file on your home directory, so let's configure GitHub CLI as an example. In this example, we want to alias ghauth status command to ghas command. This can be done by creating a YAML file to this path with the alias configuration. Now after you run the switch command, you should see the file on your home directory, and when you run ghas command on your terminal, it should show the same output as ghauth status command. At this point, you might be able to migrate most of your programs and .files to Home Manager. An alternative way to configure a program is to use Programs option. Typically, Programs option will have Enable option, which is equivalent to adding the program to home.packages option. Also, it often comes with Settings option, which is equivalent to creating a configuration file with home.file option. The Programs option usually also have other options that are specific to that program. One thing to note is that Programs option might not work alongside with home.packages and home.file options. This happens because the Programs option might generate its own configuration file once it's enabled, which will conflict with the configuration file you created with home.file option. So let's delete the old configuration and run the switch command. The command should run successfully and you should still be able to run ghas command. So let's configure FZF program as another example. Let's enable it with programs.fzf.enable option. If you take a look at another option on the programs.fzf, we can see enable bash integration option, which is set to true by default. With bash integration enabled, when we run a command with double star argument, we expect to see FZF fuzzy completion in our shell. Now let's run switch command with this configuration. The switch command should run successfully and we can see FZF is installed. Unfortunately, when we run a command with double star argument, we don't see any fuzzy completion. This happens because bash integration for FZF is added to bashrc file generated by Home Manager, and we expect our bash shell to load that bashrc file, but in reality, it loads existing bashrc file from our home directory. In my case, it was the default bashrc file that comes with Ubuntu. You will likely encounter the same issue if some of your option relies on bashrc in some way. For example, home.session variables option will not work because it relies on bashrc file to set environment variables. And for the same reason, any program feature that relies on environment variables set by home manager will not work. Also, anything with enable bash integration might not work because typically it works by adding an integration script to bashrc file. And this issue is not limited to bash, but also to zsh and fish if you use them. The easiest way to fix this is to make bash shell also managed by home manager. This will symlink the bashrc file on your home directory to the bashrc file generated by home manager. So let's set programs.bash.enable to true in our home.nix file and run the switch command. Now we expect bash program to be managed by home manager, but as you can see, the switch command failed with error messages. The error message says that bashrc file already exists in our home directory, so we cannot put our version of bashrc that was generated by home manager. So there are several ways to fix this. If you have important configurations inside your bashrc file, you can move it to programs.bash.bashrc extra option. Then delete the bashrc file on your home directory. If you have default bashrc that comes with your distro and you don't care about it, you can just delete it. Or if you're just too lazy and want your command to just work, you can run switch command with -b flag followed by a string. The switch command will rename all the conflicting files by adding the string you provided to the end of the file name. For example, here we used bckp as the string, and after the switch command runs successfully, we can see the old bashrc file is now renamed to bashrc.bckp. Now you can open a new shell session and you should be able to use fuzzy completion. So now let's talk about another issue. Let's say you want to install a Discord. You will add Discord to home.packages and run the switch command, but the command will fail. This happens because Discord has an unfree license. And in order to install unfree license with home manager, you need to explicitly allow it on your configuration. The easiest way to do that is by setting nixpackages.config.allow_unfree option to true. But that will allow all unfree software to be installed, which I personally do not recommend. The alternative is to set a function to nixpackages.config.allow_unfree predicate option. The function takes a package as an argument and returns a boolean value whether the package is allowed or not. A common pattern is to just get the name of the package and check whether it's an element of the list of packages we allow. After configuring this option, switch command should run successfully. After fixing the issues, at this point you are pretty much ready to configure most of your programs and .dot files. And other than options we already discussed, as a starting point you might want to configure environment variables with home.session variables option or configuring some background services with services option. But let's say one day you messed up your configuration. To solve this, you can undo your code until it gets back to the state where it was working and run the switch command again. But you might be in an emergency situation where you want to quickly fix your system. Solution for this is to roll back your generation. So each time you run home manager switch command, home manager will create a generation. The generation represents the state of your configuration at the time. So you can list your home manager generations by running home manager generations command. There you can see each generation has a generation ID and also path to the generation directory. Then you can roll back to a particular generation by running activate script on the generations directory. This takes the same effect as running switch command on the generation. You can try activating these generations one by one from the latest to the oldest until you are no longer in emergency situation. So as you can see, generations are useful for rolling back to past configurations, but you might realize that if you can roll back to past generations, that means the program we uninstalled on the past generations are still on our system somewhere and eating up our storage. And that is actually correct. We can solve this by removing old generation and their dependencies. So let's demonstrate this by uninstalling Discord. Let's remove packages.discord from home.nix file and run switch command. When we run home manager generations again, we can see the new generation is created. Now we will run nix collect garbage-d. This command will remove all generation and their dependencies except the generation we are currently on. And since this core doesn't exist on the current generation, it will be completely removed from our system. But please be aware that running this command will make you unable to roll back to past configurations. So rolling back to past generations is very useful, especially in emergency situations, but the better way is to version control your configuration. So now let's initialize this directory as a Git repository and push it to remote repository. If you don't have Git installed on your system, you can enable Git on your home manager configuration. So let's run git init to initialize this directory as a Git repository. But before doing any git add, let's run home manager switch command. And unexpectedly, the command failed. This happens because Nix flags on a Git repository requires all files sourced by Nix to be tracked by Git. So the solution is to make all files tracked by Git using git add command. Then you can run home manager switch command again and it should run successfully. So now you have your configuration version controlled by Git, so it's a good time to split your configuration into multiple files. In context of home manager, home.nix file is called a module file, and you can create multiple of them. Here's the starting template for a module file. After you created a new module file with given template, you can move parts of your configuration on home.nix to this new file. Then you also need to import it in the modules option on your home configuration on Flake.nix file. So let's run switch command again, but unfortunately it will fail. This happens because the new module file is not tracked by Git. So every time you create a new module file, don't forget to git add the file before running the switch command. After the file is tracked by Git, switch command should run just fine. So now you have declarative configuration for your home directory, which is also version controlled by Git. So in future, when you want to reinstall your current system or when you move to a new system, you can expect Home Manager to recreate your home directory configuration with only a couple of commands. To do that, I would recommend to create an init script which will recreate your home manager configuration with a single copy paste. For the activation part, it can be done with single home manager switch command. And if you put your configuration on a public repository, you don't even need to clone it locally. But let's say you put your configuration on a private GitHub repository. In this case, you can run ghauth-login and ghrepo-clone commands to authenticate your GitHub account and clone your repository. Installing Nix and running these three commands are all you need to do to recreate your home manager configuration. Add this to your repository's README and you saved yourself in the future. Now let's talk about how to update your packages. In a Nix project that uses Flake.nix, you can see a list of external repositories that your project depends on by looking at inputs attribute on your Flake.nix file. In our case, our Flake.nix depends on two inputs, and one of them is Nix pkgs, or we will read it as Nix packages. This input points to a GitHub repository with username NixOS, repository name Nix packages, and specifically on the branch name NixOS unstable. But the branch name alone does not guarantee reproducibility. So inside the flake.log file, you can see the commit hash currently used by our configuration. In our case, the commit hash was generated when we initialized our configuration. And over time on the Nix packages repository, pull request that updates a package will be merged to the NixOS unstable branch, so the commit hash of the branch will be updated. And to reflect these changes on our configuration, we need to update the commit hash on our flake.log file. To do that, we can run nix flake update command. After the command finishes, you can see the commit hash of the branch is updated on the flake.log file. After you run the switch command, you should see all of your packages are updated to the latest version. So that's it for how to use Home Manager, and now I want to show you two downsides that are specific to Home Manager and Nix. The first downside is that you need to run switch command every time you change your configuration. Solution to this is to use function make out of store symlink. This function will create a symlink that targets a path you passed as an argument. Then you can use it on source option of home.file like this to place the symlink on your home directory. For example, you can create a symlink on your home directory that targets a file on your local repository. This way you can just modify the file on your local repository and a program can read the modified file without running the switch command. One disadvantage of using this approach is that existence of the targeted file is not guaranteed by Nix. So your repository needs to exist on the exact location you specified. If you clone your repository to a different location, the symlink will be broken and the program will not load the configuration. So to mitigate this, I would recommend to specify fixed location when you clone your repository. Another downside of using Nix is that there is no straightforward way to install specific version of a package. Solution to this is to add another Nix packages flag input. Here we will use Playwright package as an example. The first thing you need to do is to open nixhub.io website. Inside the website, search for the name of the package you want to install, then find the version you want to install. Then copy the Nix packages commit hash corresponding to that version. Then add new input to your Flake.nix file with name Nix packages playwright, for example. Then make it points to Nix packages repository with the commit hash you copied. On Flake outputs, now we have a new argument Nix packages playwright. Then we can get packages equivalent of Nix packages playwright by accessing legacy packages.system attribute. Let's name this variable packages playwright. Then you need to pass this variable to extra special args option of home configuration function. Now you can access packages playwright from module argument. Then you can access playwright package from that packages playwright variable. After you run switch command, you should be able to use playwright with the version you specified. If you have multiple packages you want to install with specific version, you need to do this for each package. Although sometimes Nix packages manage multiple versions of a package, so in that case, you don't have to add new input for each version. So that's it for how to get started with Home Manager. Like and subscribe for more Nix content. Coffee donation will be appreciated. Thanks for watching and the name is Nix Hero.